Welcome to the Farming Without the Bank podcast, the show with a no BS approach to money, hosted by a farm strategy expert and authorized IBC practitioner. Join us as we get real and expose the flaws of traditional financial institutions in order to help farmers take control of their finances, create peace of mind, grow their wealth, and leave a legacy. Now, here's your host, Mary Jo Ehrman.
Hey, what's going on? Just kidding. Hello, and welcome back to the podcast. Thank you very much for being here. I appreciate it. I am now getting emails from people. Hello. I love it. I had no idea that I was doing that when I didn't do that on purpose, but it's apparently become a thing. That is how I start my podcast. So thank you for being here. I welcome all the new people. Oh my goodness, we have so many new people from the Barn Talk podcast interview. And so I appreciate you all as well. And that was just the funnest podcast interview I've probably ever done. So if you do not listen to Barn Talk, I would go listen to their podcast, but I would also encourage you to listen to the podcast that we had over there. We will be running it on this channel at some point, but for right now, it is only on Barn Talk, so you can go over there and grab it. Out of that podcast came an email from a young kid that is 17 years old, and that led to today's podcast because I got an email from him, I don't know, maybe a week ago already, and I'm still annoyed by the whole thing. So I want to talk to you about that on a couple of different levels. Number one, okay, so let me set the scene. It's a 17-year-old kid that emailed and said, "Hey, Mary Jo, I heard you on Barn Talk, got the book. Am I able to implement this at 17? My parents said that they don't think that it's a good idea. Hence, they've not read the book, but they don't think that it's a good idea. And if I want to do this, I need to talk to our life insurance agent or insurance agent. And I don't think that that's a good idea because if he knew about this, he would have told my parents about it. And obviously, he doesn't know anything about it." Kid is super sharp at 17. I got to give him that because he's exactly right. There are adults that are like, "Oh, I'm going to go talk to my insurance agent about it." If your insurance agent knew about it, why wasn't he telling you? And then to risk and say, "Yep, okay." The kid read the book and paid attention to what I am saying in the book. Here is my issue with it, is these parents, this kid is 17. These parents just poo-poo the idea because of some past information that they've never probably learned. The question they asked him is, what is the difference between this and an IRA? Okay, but everything is the difference. And you wouldn't have to ask your 17-year-old this if you read the book. And what parent does not say, "Oh my gosh, my 17-year-old is reading something. He is doing extra work. He's learning. Why would I not want to participate in that and help him and guide him?" I'd have been all over that book and I would have made sure that I sat through the meeting with him. I have tons of parents that sit through meetings with their young children and say, "Hey, you know what? You're 17, 16, 18, 19 years old. Let me sit through the meeting, make sure you understand everything Mary Jo is saying, or let me sit with you so that I can decide if I like this or not." I have adults with parents sitting with them in meetings. And sometimes it goes well and sometimes it doesn't go well. But when it does not go well, it's because the other person did not read the book. So these parents have chose not to read the book. And he has replied back to me and said, "Yeah, I'll keep working on them to read the book." Because the kid doesn't turn 18 till May. And he cannot own a life insurance policy until he is 18 years old. So his parents would have to own the policy or somebody else would have to own the policy that has insurable interest in him. So it is not just that simple to get started. It is so super frustrating to me. He's 17. Most likely his parents are Gen Xers. And who are the ones complaining about the boomers, the Gen Xers? And so that's a great example as well that every single generation has blockheaded arrival syndromed individuals. And when I talk about arrival syndrome, that is in Nelson's book, right? He talks about not having the arrival syndrome. You don't ever want to be in a position where you think you know it all. But it was interesting as I was reviewing his book this morning, this very thing came up about misclassification. And in the book, or in Nelson's book, Becoming Your Own Banker, he talks about creating an entity. And he has a couple of different things within that actual chapter. But the one thing that he talks about is how people are misclassifying stuff. They're saying, go buy term, rent insurance from the insurance company. Chances are you're not going to die. But in there, he also says that there is a huge amount of nonsense going on in the marketplace because of the misclassification of things. This is not new, nor is it unique to the financial world. Okay? The Europeans went from a condition of thinking that the potato was poison to one of large-scale dependence on it. Of course, this change of understanding took place over a long period of time. The world seems to always behave this way. We pick up some screwball idea that is based on a half-truth and let it grow into a monster that blinds us to what is really happening. There is probably thousands of such examples of misclassification that we run into every day, but they probably don't increase the quality in our lives. Instead, they limit our thinking and lead us to wrong conclusions. Words are powerful things. I was reviewing and it just fit the subject that has been bugging me for a week. We have gone so far as to have the arrival syndrome and misclassify. Because he goes on in that chapter to talk about why universal life and variable life aren't good. And if indexed life would have hit that prior to his passing, he'd have probably added that. There is a reason that people don't understand whole life. And a lot of that reason is misclassification and the arrival syndrome combined. Now, everybody says, oh, it's an age limit. It's the boomers that don't want to understand. I have a new client that is 82 years old. 82. His Gen X children brought this idea to him. He read the book. He understood it. He was open to learning. 82 years old. Don't tell me that boomers are closed-minded. I have some Gen Xers in front of you that their child is excelling beyond most children. What 17-year-old is actually trying to get ahead? Very few, right? Very, very few. Most kids are not going to grow up till they're in their late 20s. He is 17 and he is going to be a force to be reckoned with because not only is he reading, but he is already logically thinking. Typically in that environment, the parents are logically thinking. That is obviously not the case. The parents are obviously very set in their ways and thinking that, it's buy term and invest the difference. The misclassification of what whole life insurance is what has caused the majority of the issues when we talk about whole life. We are classifying it as this expensive thing, when in fact it is priced correctly because you are going to die on their watch. You are not getting out of this alive, okay? You're going to die on their watch. Universal life and variable life and IULs are different because you may not die on their watch. So it's not as expensive. The market makes up the difference. Term insurance is not as expensive because you are probably not going to die on their watch. The risk is much lower. So when we start to put things in the right spot, it makes sense to what we are talking about. But until we can rationalize and we can really look at what's happening, we're not even going to be able to understand that because we think somebody said potatoes are poison. We can never eat a potato again. Now, look at what's happened with potatoes as an example. Everybody eats them. Potatoes are wonderful, right? I love potatoes. But it is because enough people said, no, I'm not dying from this potato. If you cook it correctly, if you eat it correctly, it is not going to be poisonous. What happens when you use whole life correctly? What happens when you use an agent that understands, that structures it correctly, that helps you walk through the process of it? What happens when you educate yourself about the AKA potato? You now understand why whole life is not a bad thing. It is no different than saying, oh, the world is flat. But the world's not flat, right? The world is round. We don't ever fall off of an edge. And so until somebody investigates and spreads that word, it's going to be a harder and harder thing to understand. So that is what my book does, is it just spreads the word. It's what Nelson's book does. There's just not enough agents out there that are talking about this, that it really sounds like it's this too good to be true thing. And believe me, I was there. Remember? I thought when I heard about this, I thought for sure everybody was going to jail. It was the biggest scam in the world. That's what I thought. But I read the book and educated myself instead of just walking out of that office and saying, you know what, this is the biggest scam in the world. No, you have to at least do the due diligence. And so there's a couple of takeaways from this. Don't misclassify something, no matter what it is. Every part of life is going to have a misclassification, right? And where we are going to be stuck and stubborn. Why are we stuck and stubborn? That doesn't make absolutely any sense to me at all. Think rationally about something before we get on a tangent about why we don't like something. I am a queen of tangents. I will beat a dead horse forever. But I at least want to think rationally about that, or I want to ask for feedback. Last week, I did a podcast on second to die policies, and I don't like them. Why I don't see value in them. I had another agent that I'm working with email or message me and said, Mary Jo, here's a thought prop. Here's a reason why I have used a second to die. And I said, okay, but you could have done blah, 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 and blah. And he's like, oh, yeah, okay. So we have to, I love to talk about things. Challenge me. I am open to that. But when we're not open to it, we're going to shut down a 17-year-old kid. We're going to shut down our kids because we're frankly too lazy to understand or want to read or educate ourselves. Those people that are too lazy aren't even listening to this podcast. I'm preaching to the choir. Here is what I'm doing. And if you are the choir and you share it with the rest of the people outside of the church, they are not going to understand it or even give 2 seconds to listen to it. And some people will just never take the action to do those things. And then they will whine and cry and moan about why they are in the position that they are in. So when there's the moral, because I didn't really have an end to this. Okay, so I got to end this somehow. Because clearly I'm a little bit annoyed. But the moral of this is understand there's misclassification. Understand that you should not have the arrival syndrome. Understand that there are good kids. This is a Gen Zer, right? If you've listened to my podcast with Ken Gronbach talking about generations, you understand that the millennials ended at they are now 19 years old, 18 to 19. I believe they're 19. And so, or 18 today, whatever. Go back and listen to Ken Grunbach. Every generation is 20 years, but they shortened millennials. No, you can't do that when you are looking at statistics. And so this kid would be a Gen Zer, and he would be the beginning of the Gen Zs. So I don't care what you call him, he is light years ahead of his peers. And that's what Nelson talks about in the book too, right? In Parkinson's law, don't do what your peers are doing because they're all not paying attention. I just talked to a young lady the other day that was trying to explain this to a friend. This young lady is in her early 20s. Just trying to explain this to a friend at college. And the friend said, "Oh, my mommy will just take care of me." Okay. And as much as people want to be annoyed with that, we are separating ourselves. And I have really paid attention over the last several years. What is happening with kids at what age? Because we're all beating up on these young kids. But guess what? I know people my age that they didn't actually mature till they were in their 30s. Like, get your crap together. I mean, at 23 years old and 22 years old, I was already doing network marketing. I was reading Robert Kiyosaki. I was trying to absorb as much as I possibly could. I went to college and that was just boring. Yes, I got to go for something I wanted, but I always had this desire to learn things and to do things and to talk to people about things. And so for me, I'm like, what you doing at 30? You're still just hanging out? But everybody, and that's not a bad thing. It's just everybody develops at a different level. We cannot expect everybody to be the 17-year-old. Like, I wish my 18-year-old was like that and wanted to learn all this stuff I do. She just wants to listen to me, tell her everything that I've read. Oh my gosh, I want to just choke her sometimes. Go out and read it yourself. Why? Just because I like to talk and I repeat what I've read to you, that doesn't mean you wouldn't have gotten more stuff out of it. So it's the same thing as when people say, "Well, I just listened to your podcast. I want to meet with you." No, you don't get to just listen to my podcast. You have to read the book or listen to the book. That is there for a reason. Nelson's book is there for a reason. I am not able. Yes, after 200 podcasts, I have talked a lot about it and teachings about it, but I still want you to understand the basics. I still want you to see it and hear it for yourself. Because if you don't, even the people that listen to the book are not as prepared in our meetings as the people that read the book. I can tell. I'm like, "Oh, you didn't read the book." Because they don't look at the numbers. They don't understand stuff because we're listening as we're doing something else. We don't have 100% attention on what we are listening to. And not everybody understands by verbal communication. I need to physically see stuff in order for me to understand it. So I will listen to a book and then I will go back and read it. But we cannot expect everybody to be at the same spot. So don't expect I can't expect my 18-year-old to go read a book when that's not what she wants to do. It's not what her interest is in that subject. Oh, I get it. I'm a parent, right? My 27 and 29-year-olds, would I like them to be further in life? Yes, 100%. But was I in any different point of life than they are? Not necessarily. I mean, I was right there with where my 27-year-old is, because that he is light years ahead of most of his peers. It is just a point of where we're at, but we have to meet our kids there. Why are we telling them, "Nope, sorry, we're not going to read the book. We're not going to sit through the meeting. That's just a scam"? How do you know? How do you know? You clearly don't, because you've not done the homework. Okay. It's crazy to me. It's absolutely crazy to me. I just don't understand how people are thinking like that and how they just dismiss their children and any of their thoughts. I don't get it. I don't get it. Now, did my parents? Yes, to some extent, they did, and I didn't listen, right? So My dad could, when I first started this, he was like, I tried to do that, but I don't think that's a good idea. And so I just kept going and learning and doing whatever. And so it is not like, but I wasn't 17 years old. And my dad has gotten to a point where maybe he's not, well, he's always open to new ideas because that's just how we are. My mom listens to everything. Like, I don't understand. My brain doesn't work that way. Okay. So I'm preaching to the choir. If you have someone that needs to listen to this, feel free to share. And maybe we can change one mind. Maybe we can change one mind and open one person's eyes to what is going on. I don't care what it is. I don't care if it's finances. I don't care if it's how you farm. I don't care if it's how you feed cattle, how you buy cattle. I frankly don't care what it is, but you should always be open to it and not ignorant to it. All right, guys. As always, let me know if you need anything, maryjo@withoutthebank.com. You are welcome to email me, grab your books. If you have not, get my book and Nelson's. If you get the bundle, it's just going to provide more information to you. I know some people get my book and then they don't get Nelson's and they come back and get it later. It is cheaper if you buy the bundle. So go to farmingwithoutthebank.com and grab those, or withoutthebank.com and grab them. And I'll see you in a meeting after you read the book. I look forward to hearing from y'all. Talk to you later.
Thanks for listening to the Farming Without the Bank podcast. We hope today's episode has inspired you to take control of your finances in new ways. Don't forget to check out our website, farmingwithoutthebank.com, and engage with us on our Facebook page, Farming Without the Bank. Join us next week as we smash more financial myths and empower you to accomplish your financial goals.